members all spread all over, Middle East, South Africa, India. So the topic that you have already mentioned, Shalinder, is global standard on energy efficiency. And I think today's topic is very, very important in the sense that we all are talking about energy efficiency. And here we are talking about, raising the bar of energy efficiency in our region, which is region at large, which is one of the largest region in ASHRAE. With this, I don't want to take time from our speakers. So I would like to welcome all the delegates and AHRI team, including Dr. Samir Tabulsi, who's been a very close friend and mentor for me. I would like to welcome Dr. Khalil and Nabil. And over to you, Shalinder. Let's start the.
Thank you, sir.
Very much.
Now I would like to introduce Dr. Samir Tabulsi. So he's currently a senior lecturer at the American University of Beirut at Notre Dame University at the Training Center of the Order of Engineers and Architects and at the AHRAE Global Training Center in Dubai. Has taught a variety of subjects including building services, technical services, MEP design of green and net zero buildings, HVAC courses, thermodynamics, operation research, system dynamics, commissioning, engineering economy, and engineering ethics. Dr. Tabulsi is the founder of the AHRAE Lebanese chapter and served its president during 1995 to 1997 AHRAE board as director, regional chair, DRC, and director at large. He also served as co-founder and former president of Lebanon Green Building Council during 2008 to 2012. He has worked extensively with UN agencies and with the Lebanese Ministry of Environment as a consultant and presented lectures worldwide. Dr. Tabulsi is the author of numerous publications and is the recipient of the Student Activities Achievement Award, John James International Award, Distinguished Service Award, and Exceptional Service Award Fellow, and recently the F. Paul Anderson Award. Now I am inviting the Dr. Tabulsi for the first presentations of today's event. So over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And also, I'd like to thank you and thank all the team of RAL who made it possible for this webinar today, as well as I'd like to thank the AHR team as well, and the attendees who are with us today. Thank you so much, and let me proceed with the presentation. I know that we have limited time, so allow me please to upload. All right, so topic today is talking about the smoothness in having the compliance for meeting the requirements in the standards. I'll start first talking about 90.1 and then later on 189, touching on the lead, touching on any, and the B quotient of the AHRI as well. So the outline would be energy conservation standards and background. Why do we have today the conservation, energy conservation standards, and how the 90.1 came, and as well as 90.2 for residential. A couple of projects in MENA applications, which is applicable also to HAT region. Then I'll discuss the relationship between the 189, between International Green Conservation Code, LEED certification, and building E quotient. Later, we'll have only the summary. Start with energy issue being.
Samir, sorry to interrupt. Are you presenting anything?
Yeah, let me share it. Yes.
Oh, because we are only seeing you. We don't mind seeing you, but at the same time, you're missing the screen.
Yeah, 1 second, please.
Yeah.
Can stop seeing me as well.
No, we are seeing you and the screen now. Thank you very much, Samir. Yeah, we can see you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I was saying that I have five items to discuss today. And more importantly, talk about the first topic, which is why we're talking about energy conservation standards worldwide. Energy became a problem as of the 1973 when Europe and North America suffered from lack of supply of energy. Like today, we're seeing certain countries facing similar issues because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So energy is being demanded, consumed since ages without account. But when scientists, experts, engineers started talking about sustainability, then they became aware that they should do something for the energy. Anytime we talk about a building, anytime we talk about a country, the energy consumption is split among several components. So if you talk about energy in a country, it differs between one country and another, but all of them, they talk about 33% somewhere, 34%, as if it is subdivided into three equal components: the buildings, the transportation, and the industry, power plants, whatever. So you see, the world should know what sort of allocation they have for individual sector, and they noticed that the consumption of the world is continuously increasing without burden, without limit, and that required people to start think what will going to happen when we'll have a depletion of the non-renewable resources. If you look at the global sources of primary energy today, subdivided between coal, oil, gas, bioenergy, renewable, and nuclear, you'll find out that if things continue, they say business as usual, you'll find out that in the year 2100, the temperature, the global temperature will be increased by, say, over 3.5 degrees Celsius from today, knowing that the whole years before the 1970s, they were only increased by 1.4 or 1.5. So it becomes an issue now. If we continue consuming the energy without limits, definitely the world will suffer, and you know what would mean afterwards. Look at the consumption of coal. You see it's increasing. Look at the oil itself, also primary is increasing. Natural gas is increasing. Now also we may have other primary energy sources, whether it is renewable, also is increasing, but in a more towards the exponential, and we hope it will be coming this way. Cost of the oil is another problem. So though it go up and down, but still a problem. If you raise the cost of the oil, everything will follow, and that would be the problem. Oil pricing, we've seen it for the last years. Other way of looking at it is just last year, see how it is increasing. With the conflict we have in Europe today, expect to have more increase. So that prompted engineers, architects, built environment people in general to, I call it mushrooming. They mushroom the energy. You see, they were developed everywhere. It started in the UK at one time with the 70s, started in the US with AHRI and other technical organizations. Then later we've seen lots and lots of standards, lots and lots of guidelines, position statements. Now we talk about net zero energy building guidelines and standards. Then we have also measuring the green building councils worldwide, and following it, talk about rating system. So you see how it moved because of the need of curtailing or limiting the consumption and the demand of oil. And what we have actually are fruitful results. We talk about green buildings. Now we talk about net zero energy building. This is the first slide related to National Green Building Standard. It's a standard, and you could see how it's increasing among the various components in rating. So if you say the typical one is the black one compared to the emerald would be the green ones, and it is on continuous improvement year after year. Looking at different standards at different times, you find out that for the standard 90.1 in particular, every time it comes published, let's say we have the latest one, 2019, it should, and it is actually much more, having more improvement than the preceding publication of 2016. Every 3 years, we may have a new standard being revised, being reissued. So between 2016 and 2019, if you look at ASHRAE standard here, you find out there is an improvement percentage-wise. If we continue doing that every 3 years, we have a new standard for 90.1. I can assure you by reaching 2050, that time would be ensuring that all the buildings, if they are actually in compliance with the standard 90.1, ultimately, then the buildings will become net zero. And this is the target. The world is moving net zero energy building based on this. They cannot move in 5 years, in 10 years. They've tried it, they failed. It was at the very beginning, we were talking about 2020 and then talk about 2030. Now 2050 would be the target. So the idea here, every publication of a standard 90.1 would make it possible for the engineers and the architects to be in compliance with it, but when they do, it would mean saving in the energy. These are the three main driving forces for meeting the requirement for energy conservation. We have the standard 90.1, our famous one, but you see how it's going to take some time to reach the minimum. Compared to advanced energy design guidelines, they are maybe, if they are followed with 100%, we have latest one, we will be having the chance to meet the minimum earlier. Then we have also the 189. Similarly speaking, every year we have, every 3 years we have publication of the standard. You see how it's drifting towards lower and lower energy consumption. Now with that, all institutions, all technical organizations worldwide, even governmental organizations, they're following this, and they're finding out that, yes, for the situation for residential buildings, you see that it is improving in the energy consumption all over the years. Here we talk about also other in relative energy consumption for new appliances also is declining. Talk about the savings we get from electricity because of the use of reducing the consumption on one side and improving on the renewable energy, we have it increasing. And finally, the refrigeration as a component, as one of the items covered also by 90.1 under the plug loads, also it's decreasing. So it's promising. Energy commercial buildings also is reducing over the time. The idea is to reach 2050, hopefully with the zero. See, this is also reduction in the space heating and space cooling between certain application and another. This is the standard. I'm sure that lots of us here, they have dealt with it. They are still working with it. We have one for the 2019 90.1 and the latest one for 90.2, the residential for 2018. So what's the objective? After seeing the improvement being carried, then one can tell what would be the objective. The objective is to improve the efficiency, the energy efficiency standards, only the plug load. They are also realized because of the envelope. If we prepare barriers to eliminate the chance for the heat transfer to come from outside to the inside in summer and vice versa in winter, from the inside to the outside, that means the envelope will be so important component in addressing when we have the standard being issued, aiming at improving the energy standard, efficiency standard, movement over the lighting, over the appliances we have. And also now recently we talk about the integration with the grid. you have renewable energy. Work on crashing the energy consumption or demand on one side. We have to combine it, correlated with crashing on one side on the on the renewable and generation of energy. So when they meet, then they talk about the net zero energy building. Now, Department of Energy in the US, they come up with comparison between the standard 90 and 2019 versus the addition of standard 2016. You find out that there are savings, 4% saving. In 3 years, you have 4%. So could you imagine what's going to happen in the 50 until 30 years to come? So 4% saving in the national side energy. You have source energy 4.3 savings, energy cost also 4.3, and finally, relating it also to the environment, we have also 4.2% savings in the emission of CO2. And that would be reflected on improving on reduction of the global temperature change. This standard is published every 3 years. Now we have the 2019, expect 2022 later this year. Some certain states, they moved from the standard idea into language into a code. Several states, they have it now as a code built on the 90.1 convention. It covers, as some of us may know, new buildings, addition of existing building, and alteration in the existing buildings. With these, they may bring of the alterations, they may bring with them equipment, cooling systems, ductwork, and piping. This is within the scope. Of course, such alterations may have certain exceptions, and that would also are addressed in it. If you have modified or repaired, and that means it's not repaired. If they are replaced or ordered, type of refrigerant, relocating the equipment, the duct and the piping, resizing, all of this would go under the exception components for meeting the change alterations in the building or in the equipment. Now, in the equipment, if you have a direct replacement, you may see that you have all these technical issues you have to look at. First of all, we'll talk about simplified, and then I'll talk about it in a while. We'll talk about equipment efficiencies, the controls, overlap restrictions for the set points of our controls, ventilation systems, freeze protection, not in our place here, but in colder places, ventilation controls, heated or cooling vestibules, walk-in coolers, air economizers, all of these components. Now, the idea is not to explain the 90.1, but to highlight what is actually covered by it. Economizers, fan efficiency, functional horsepower, boiler turn down, chiller and boiler isolation, and fan speed control. And that would take us to the compliance requirement. How would you be considered that you are in compliance? As you can see here, the standard 90.1 talks about independently, they talk separately. They talk about the envelope, the HVAC, our concern today, and service water heating and power, lighting, and any other. As you can see from this, you will realize that there is something called mandatory here. There is something called prescriptive, simplified, different methods, trade-off, energy cost budget. And now we're talking about the Appendix G with the verification afterwards. If this is the standard, if we have a code in a certain stage, then authority of having jurisdiction should review and find out if the building is in compliance based on one of these three different paths. How do you see it? I go into this one, maybe it's more clearer. When you talk about HVAC section number 6, you will go through general requirement, definitions, you present certain definitions of the path to be in compliance. You can see if this, you can have a path moving into the left-hand side, you have a simplified approach. You have another path will take you to the mandatory. After the mandatory, you have 4 options today. Either you go into the prescriptive, and I'll discuss now, or you go into alternative compliance path, or the old method called energy cost budget. And more importantly today, it's the Appendix G. Appendix G is recently, I mean, maybe this is the second time we see it properly in the standard 2016 and 2019. It reflects it will identify by how much the savings are being carried. Because if you follow the standard with the requirement, you will be saving, no doubt about that. But most of the time, you will be enjoying the fact that you are not only in compliance, but on top of that, you are saving certain percentage on top of what is required by the standard. So Appendix G will tell you by how much you are having additional savings. The simplified approach has certain limitations, like we talk about area of the building should be less or equal to 2,400 meters square. It should not go beyond 1 or 2 stories. A system should have a single HVAC zone, and you may have certain criteria that it is available in the cooling and the heating part. The mandatory provisions I talked about, so after, if it is not following the simplified, we go into the mandatory. The mandatory will tell you what sort of efficiency you may be having, what sort of systems you, package units, split units, chillers, how they are operated, furnaces, all the details are given based on the climate zone, based on the decision of the designer to undertake certain piece of equipment with their efficiencies. When they are mandatory, that means you have to follow them. If you violate, you cannot proceed further. You have to prove to the authority that you have all the provisions under the mandatory are met. You go to the prescriptive, and again in the prescriptive, you are given a choice, a chance of meeting within certain range. So if you talk about efficiencies, they tell you it should be less than this. They don't specify it exactly, but they tell you it can be less. Other systems, they are under the prescriptive. Each item you see here is detailed, given tables, and identified recently with the climate zone relevant to. Then the alternate compliance path sometimes is related to the data centers when you have alternate compliance. In fact, it was at one time you fail in meeting certain prescriptive requirement in one, you will make it up with the other one. So overall, you will be considered to be, you lose in one, you gain in one, the total net result would be still acceptable. Then you follow the submittal and you submit to the authority of jurisdiction. So what does it mean? It means we should be having an authority of jurisdiction in a certain place that is requiring you to do so. Now, relationship with LEED, also LEED started with the standard 90.1 2010, and Appendix G would talk about comparing the proposed design with the baseline design. You follow the same shape of the building, but you do simulation based on the weather, the climate zone, the energy rate, particular for that, and you come up with a percentage. This is similar to what we have seen earlier. So how much percentage of saving we are doing between 2019 and 2016. Likewise here, I'm going to go into one table only to facilitate the remaining tables. So you see, if this standard is for 2016, for any function, you will be having certain energy utilization index. You'll find out if you go into 2019, you have it less. So what does it mean? It means the standard 90.19 is driving you to have your building more energy efficient than the previous one. Also, recently we have it also per climate zone, and it will be in 2019. So maybe 2022 will have an option in the future, near future, to compare. Climate zones are defined today. Each country can be identified in a high ambient temperature or not. Now, MENA region was benefiting from the standards. Most of our chapters are available in the MENA region, in the high ambient temperature region, Middle East, Northern Africa, Western Asia. They are familiarized with the ASHRAE, and I believe I've seen it. I believe lots of the rating systems, they were devised or prepared, developed based on the ASHRAE guidelines of the 90.1 on one hand, on the 62 on the other hand, and the server conf. In Kuwait in particular, they went into a specialized publication serving the Kuwait itself for residential. This is the standard, similar to, not similar as such, but developed for serving the Kuwait high ambient temperature. Some of the buildings you've seen maybe yourself, some of the rating systems we have in the MENA region, and I'm sure that in sub-region 2, they have a lot of rating systems being developed, and maybe would be looking for hearing from our colleagues from there. What's the relationship? So you first start with the 90.1 and everybody became more comfortable with using it. Then there was a need for the 189.1 because then we started talking about the green concepts. The green concepts are beyond the energy. Energy is one of them, but we still have indoor air quality, we still have well-being and comfort and other encouraging items that within a certain building we have to look. So internal air quality is important. Why we are interested in the 189 more, not only the 90.1, because we live 90% of our time indoor, and then we deserve a good indoor air quality, and the 189 really had addressed this. All the countries, they went into green buildings, councils, and after that, they went into rating after the one. So 189 is actually being prepared. It is a standard, and it is with other standards, it's the more stringent in regard to the components. So what are the components? Actually, let me go into the components. It applies similarly speaking to new buildings, new portion, new systems, like we've seen in the standard 90.1, but it does not apply to single, that one, 189. One more, these are the areas of interest. We talk about 189. We have sustainable sites with the details. We have water use efficiency, energy efficiency. This is the core based on 90.1. And actually it started with the 207. Indoor air quality, building impacts on atmosphere, material and resources to select the right material that do not emit. They are friendly with the ozone layer, and the type of plants we have. Construction and operation plans as well. Mainly, I talk about it from the energy efficiency. It's the core of the standard 189. And you see that it tackles certain areas that we have already seen in the 90.1. For example, it added something called demand control ventilation. Why should you run the fans if there is no motion or there is no need for that? Talk about economizers, talk about restricting amount of reheat and or recool. New climate zones being introduced, and required also talk about lesser CO2 emission factors defined as well. The recent, now one point here, I have to make sure that the recent the publication addressed high performance healthcare facilities as well, how we make it sustainable in its operational mode. Then we have something called the International Green Code, Construction Code, the international one. So it is related to LEED. So you see how things are became related in a way. So the International Green Construction Code, now it's available in North America as the same thing. The 189 will not be available in North America, only internationally outside the North America, United States and Canada. And similarly speaking, when you talk about the IGCC, it came based on the cooperation between the ICC and the ASHRAE. It talks about minimum requirement for, it looks like the same, but it's different a little bit. Siting, design, construction, and operation. They talk about same ideas. We talk about strategies. We talk about capabilities, continuous maintenance of the IGCC, and what are the tools and resources that are made available. Likewise, certain applications are possible. It is comprising of 11 chapters, 11 normative information. It's really very wealthy information offered in these. These are the components that you may see it here, but you may say this is the same as 189, maybe. LEED came afterwards. And so it came as a rating system. So everybody was happy with the standard 90.1. Everybody was happy to become in compliance with the standard. Now, green buildings came, and in order to encourage people to go from a green building into a better green building, from a standard green building into, say, a bronze green building, rating systems came. And in order to influence developers to think of elevating the green features in various, as given in various components. So we have LEED, and the latest one is LEED 4.1. I'm sure some of us here are either green associates or AP. It's very important to associate yourself with such high caliber documentation or even council. LEED is a rating system, different than the USGBC. USGBC is the council that are running the LEED. You may have your building like this, and this is for operation and maintenance. Each component would be saying with certain scoring points. So you have scoring points here, you just fill the scoring points here. But more importantly, I'm presenting this to tell you that if you don't have an energy efficiency best management practice, if you don't have minimum energy efficiency performance, if you don't have fundamental of refrigerant management, these are the prerequisites. If you don't have them, don't waste your time to look into a rating system. So have the prerequisite first, and then go into the rating system. Now, later we had the building EQ quotient certification by AHRI. This is composed of two. It was started with A+ to F, but recently now they have changed it into citing your buildings wherever. So if you say 50, it means 50 coming as per in design, and this is as designed, one component, and one as in operation. So you will be having going up and down depending upon how you satisfy the building. This is like an introduction for moving into level 1 energy audit. It's very important. If you do this, that means you can easily go into the portal. We have a portal at ASHRAE. You can just fill it. Every one of us can become an official building EQ user. All you have to do, it could be either you have a certification or you have a membership in DOE. You have been an auditor by AEE or CAA. All of these are criteria for appointing you as a user for the portal. And it's very easy to use. I advise you to hit once the portal and see where you stand with respect to this. Now, final point here is talk about the improvements we have with the code 90.1 and its impact of. One point, notice that with years to come, the publication of the codes become in volume thicker and thicker. You have recently 422 pages for the last edition. Imagine next December, we'll be having another issue. Maybe it would be 600. Now, what does it mean when you increase this? When you increase this, you can see that the more increase, you are creating a gap here. Either the authority of jurisdiction may not have the sufficient expertise, the time to look into, or it would be a burden on the designers at the time when you offer them 600 pages and then you tell them
I think there is some technical glitch with Dr. Tribolosi.
Yeah, it seems like we lost Dr. Samir.
But I think he has almost completed his presentation.
Yes. I mean, he can always pick it up from where he left, you know, as and when he joins in, if time permits.
So I'm inviting the next presenter. So I would like to welcome Mr. Khalil Issa. So Khalil is the Executive Director of AHRI in the Middle East and North Africa region for almost 2 years now. He is based in Lebanon and works with members, program participants, and stakeholders specifying, promoting, and implementing HVAC and water heating, energy efficiency, and green buildings. Over the past 30 years, Khalil developed partnerships, networks, and multidisciplinary teams in HVAC manufacturing, district cooling, water utilities, and construction. He comes with a track record in managing business entities and divisions working in the USA, Lebanon, and in the Gulf region, where he led the creation of a utility startup, directed an EPC contractor in the field of district energy, and engaged with key stakeholders to establish a specialized construction company. Khalil holds a BS and an MS in Civil and Environmental Engineering from the University of Colorado. So welcome, sir. I welcome you in this program.
So Shailendra,
And,
sorry to interrupt. Shailendra, sorry to interrupt. I think Samir is back. Can see him in the screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what happened, but that's fine. Let's, Mr. Khalid, go. And I have only the final comments afterwards, please, with the questions and answers.
Okay. So, Mr. Khalil, visible?
Okay, yes, I am visible, but I prefer that Dr. Samir completes his presentation, if that's possible.
Okay. Yeah, I have no problem, but I thought it would be appropriate to give you the, anyhow, I can go back into my presentation just to conclude. I have a couple of conclusions, so that will help. Can I share the screen, please?
Yes.
Can I share the screen? Okay, thank you.
Yes, you can share your screen.
No, it says disabled.
1 minute. Making you co-host again. Yes. Now try again.
Yes, sir. It works.
Okay.
So that in conclusion, well, we have certain problems to come up with a conclusion. Let me go back also into the. Okay, we've seen improvements, and maybe these improvements over the time were not really in the same pace as we started, and that what necessitated the change of the idea of net zero. Net zero now it's changed to 2050. At the time it was scheduled 2020 and then later 2030. So that is because of the pace of the improvement that we are having now and then. The pages I talked about, you have lots of tables you have to address. Increasing the size of the standard 90.1 would create difficulties for the designers at the time and later on for the authority to make and check them. The standard also, they come up with sizing without reflection on various factors like safety, for example. We have a lack of safety, and the performance sometimes are so difficult to follow, and that would be improved with time, but reflected with less. It was found that having a building automation system would improve the energy consumption. Lighting became evident to be a good internal load reduction. And we talk about the envelope. So architects are invited as well to think and to work like glass manufacturers on one side, like the whole envelope idea as a teamwork with the engineers. Also, it is important in order to facilitate the implementation of the standard and being in compliance with. This is a request from me to all attendees here. Support the ASHRAE program. Come forward with your comments with the right PCs at the right time. It will be taken into consideration and it will be considered. There is a point here over the time when it started to have rating systems. You could see certain buildings were in compliance with the standard 90.1, but they did not secure a good rating scoring points. That been resolved recently, but it was an issue. What is the challenge? Move forward, continue to assist in having the chance for reviewing, discussing, resolution of the standard 90.1, and continue to help in making the measurements for the demand and comparing it with the equipment specification or efficiencies mentioned in the text. And this will take me to HRI that they have to move in for certification. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Shailendra, shall I begin? Since you've done already the introduction?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So first, thank you very much for this opportunity to be with you from the confines of the region at large, with the subregions 1 and 2. Good attendance, from all the way from Sri Lanka all the way to North Africa. And so I'm very pleased to represent AHRI. AHRI stands for the Air Conditioning, Heating and Refrigeration Institute. And most of you know already about it, but it's good to clarify it again. And what I want to say first is a couple of disclaimers. For one thing, Mr. Mittal gave me the title of doctor. The only doctor in this panel is Dr. Samir Trabulsi. And secondly, those are not lectures. Those are presentations that just are meant to trigger discussion and conversations, and of course, exchange knowledge. And so hopefully we look forward to the Q&A at the end of the sessions. There will be 2 speakers on my end, on the part of AHRI, me and Mr. Nabil Shaheen. Okay, with that, I will proceed and present. So perhaps, Shailendra, you can control the screen.
Yes, I'm sharing my screen.
Great. Okay. So, today is all about energy efficiency. Now, I mean, when we talk about energy efficiency, I mean, really, there are 2 elements, to controlling the energies. One is to have energy efficient buildings and energy efficient systems, and the other one is energy conservation. We will focus primarily, I mean, today on energy efficiency. Next slide. Next. Okay, so essentially, when we move to the next slide, Shailendra, essentially what we have are essentially an organization, AHRI. I'll give you a quick introduction to AHRI so that we can refresh everybody's information. So essentially, we are a global advocate with various core activities, and we strive to help save energy, improve productivity, and ensure a better environment. We have 320 plus members and over 1,000 licensees, manufacturing, residential, commercial, and industrial heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment, as well as hot water and hot water heating worldwide. Our activities revolve around three core elements. One is standards development, by developing standards for the industry. Also, we're an accredited certification body. Thus, we develop certification programs to ensure that the products are conforming to the test standards that are AHRI standards. And of course, we try to represent the industry across the globe, and we are the advocating some of the issues, some of the concerns, and of course informing consumers and users, other stakeholders about that industry and the merits of HVAC and in a nice, clean climate and environment. Next slide. What we talk about when we HVAC and refrigeration and water heating are, we've kind of coined them as under four different sectors applied for largely chilled water applications, unitary for direct expansion products, refrigeration, for commercial and off-the-shelf type of refrigeration products, and water heating products. And we're also worthy to mention that AHRI is not a profit organization; it's a non-profit organization, and AHRI is very closely associated with ASHRAE from the mere fact that we use all of ASHRAE's methods of testing, as and when we go and develop our own standards. And on the other hand, ASHRAE refers to AHRI standards in their minimum energy performance standards, like ASHRAE 90.1. Next. Okay, so essentially, we are, as I mentioned, the voice of the industry. So our head office is in Washington, D.C., and we work closely with regulators and various organizations that are of national and regional repute, as well as the international arena. We all collaborate with various organizations worldwide, and we are present in various meetings and venues such as French Protocol, Paris Agreement, Kigali, and the likes. We also, our standards, over 140 standards, are available free of charge, can be downloaded easily, and be used by any stakeholders, be it consultants or regulators or end users, institutional clients or the likes. With over 40 certification programs and 1,000 licensees, many of them, or most of them, international players, we kind of represent over 90% of the industry, in terms of the main players. We have a reference of AHRI standards and certification programs that are available, for comparing and seeing what are the standards that have certification programs and what are those that are just available for referencing and, of course, for testing, but without necessarily including a certification program. Next. Okay, so the last event that was jointly organized by ASHRAE and AHRI is the AHR Expo, which took place in February of this year in Las Vegas. We are the joint sponsors of this event for so many years, and we get involved in other events, such as next week. We will be in Egypt, and we will be participating in the HVACR Expo that Egypt Cairo chapter for ASHRAE is organizing. And hopefully I'll be able to see all of our colleagues from Egypt there. Second one is about training and certification. North American Technical Excellence is an institute that supports and certifies technicians. So on how to handle air conditioning equipment, be it from the installation or the construction or the assembly or the operation and maintenance. And people, qualified technicians can get certification on a yearly basis for that. Another area is refrigerant, and refrigerant is a big item certainly when it comes to climate change. So AHRI has a safe refrigerant transition task force that has been formed to address every step of the supply chain in the safe refrigerant transition to low global warming potential refrigerants. In addition to that, there is an ASHRAE standard 700 that specifies for specification for refrigerants, which establishes purity specifications to verify composition and to specify associate methods of testing for these refrigerants, be it a new refrigerants reclaimed or repackaged. These are being adopted, especially standard 700 is being adopted by several regulatory bodies and institutional clients worldwide. Next. Definitely, there are there's the chicken and the egg. Manufacturers do want to basically go about certifying their products, as a way to affirm themselves in the market and to confirm that they're able to compare apple with apple against other competitors. But there are also regulations that are mandatory. So we work with various regulators, be it internationally or regionally. And Nabil will be talking more about that in his part of the presentation. In addition, we conduct market surveillance through our regular testing of products, and that is what everybody that is certifying their products, every manufacturer, will be committing to do. We also have an available certification directory which allows any user, be it an end user, a consultant, a contractor, or a manufacturer for that matter, to access and see the products that are being quoted or being referred to are certified or not certified. Next. Of course, AHRI spans across the globe, and we have operations in China, in Latin America, and in the Middle East, and in India. And we have one of our colleagues also from India that is attending this event as well. As far as the MENA region in particular is concerned, we are set up to handle all the requirements for the confines of this geographical area. And we also support peripheral areas as well. And the team that is made up of Francois Bouiri, myself, Nabil Shaheen, and Dalip Singh are here to support the entire community and industry. Next. I will not definitely go into this slide, but I will just mention that we work with, and with the support of the manufacturers in the region, we're able to revise standards to make them more suitable for the region. We're able to connect with various stakeholders, and they look for us and they look for our guidance and for our support, whether it be in terms of certification or lending a voice to cooperate with regulators in the region, and green building councils and other organizations such as AHRI. We organize public events, as I mentioned, and we believe that certification is an effective tool for compliance and market surveillance. So definitely, and as you will see through the presentation, this will be explained and illustrated. Next slide. Shailendra, if you can move to the next slide. Okay, you moved 2 slides up, perhaps just one back, if you can back that up. Yes, so essentially I will just highlight that, you know, the various brands, the various manufacturers of all international, legal, regional and local repute are participating in our programs. And I would like you to skip the next couple of slides, if you don't mind, just for time reasons. Yes, this one. So, so in this particular slide, it's important to note that you know, in the region we promote and we support various programs. You can see on the right side of the picture, you know, some picture displaying the product type and the various certification programs that support it, from, you know, from water-cooled and air-cooled chillers, which is the, you know, a dominant standard, which is well known by everybody, to air handling units, you know, fan coil units, coils, you know, unitary large equipment and small equipment, VRF, variable refrigerant flow type of units, plate and frame heat exchangers, and the likes are what we support in the region. And we have a number of licensees and members in the region. Next. Okay, so yeah, we move to the next slide, please. So in terms of HRI certification, it's important to mention that it is very useful because it provides a guarantee for purchasers that the performance of the units correspond to the descriptions provided by the manufacturers and the claims put in their catalogs. In this way, the consumers can be certain of the products that have been chosen and avoid unpleasant surprises. Of course, our certification programs are conform to regulations such as ISO IEC 17065, which establishes the international criteria for bodies that deal with product certification. In addition, we have recognized and reciprocal type of agreements with certification bodies, such as you know, Saudi standards, you know, organization SASO, or the Indian Society of Heating, Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Engineers, and various other organizations in the area. In light of the above points, you know, it's important that we also mention that we've been in the industry for 65 years, honing down, improving, working, and revising our standards and certification programs to make them most updated and robust, and which that at the end of the way provides a robust market surveillance program to any participant. Thank you. Next. Okay, so there is a process by which participants do you know, go about qualifying, submitting data, and testing their products on an annual basis, which really puts it does not, I mean, essentially makes it stand on its own as compared to just testing in accordance to a particular standard that a manufacturer would go about, you know, doing it. So clearly manufacturers look for it because that puts them at a different level and really offers the end users comfort of mind and safety that they are achieving their objectives. Remember that at the end of the day, any tolerance at manufacturing, on the manufacturing part of the basis would have a huge impact later on. So that's why it's important to start on the right footprint. Time is of essence here, so I will quickly go through the other things. We have analytical tools, and please skip the next 1 or 2 slides, because Nabil will talk about that. Yes, yes, one more. The standards, the products are being tested in various labs internationally, and as I mentioned, also, you know, those are accessible in the, you know, on the platform itself. Next, and these are the type of certification programs. Next, Okay, so let's talk quickly. I mean, definitely thanks to what has been talked about by Dr. Samir. You've already seen the importance of ASHRAE 90.1 globally and in the region. Next. That translates into various different criteria which Dr. Samir has gone over and covered. I will skip that slide and skip that slide. Yes. So essentially, ASHRAE 90.1 covers all climatic regions in the world, including, of course, high ambient temperature regions, where, for example, in the MENA region, and in particular in the GCC, for example, T3 conditions rating are very much appreciated at 46 degrees as compared to 35-degree C ambient. Next. So what does that mean effectively? The AHRI plays a complementary role to ASHRAE 90.1, wherein, for example, in the ASHRAE 90.1, there are references for tables for all the minimum energy performance standards. All of these tables, as you can see on the lower left, with a sample of it, are referring to the minimum efficiency, as it rightly says, minimum energy performance standards, but it's also showing the test procedure, which are the AHRI test procedures based on ASHRAE test method of testing. And the same applies to being cited as normative standards at the back of the standard. Next slide. In addition, verification of equipment efficiency, that is a key criteria, is how to make sure that the claims are being met. So that's through verification. And clearly you will see in that graphical display that, if there is a certification program that exists as stipulated in one of the clauses of section 6.4, that that there is a room for verification and challenge of equipment and a certification program existing, then the product shall be listed in that program. So this is the criteria by which it serves as a stepping stone for compliance with ASHRAE 90.1, and thus complying with all green building codes that refer to ASHRAE 90.1. Next slide. I want to thank you for quickly, but I think the time is running out, so I will thank you. Let's keep our cash questions till the end. Please put your questions up there, and we will try to answer as much as we can at the very last part of our session. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Khalil. Yes, now we have the next presentation of Mr. Nabil Shahim. So I would like to introduce. So he is the International Technical Director of AHRI, is based in the UAE and leads the regional and international standards development efforts, oversees AHRI regional industry group, and advocates benefits of standards and certification to regulators. For the past 20 years, Nabil has held multiple technical commercial positions in the residential and commercial HVAC industry. He served as a director of engineering for JCI, Daikin, Goodman, and holds an MS in mechanical engineering from Tennessee State University. He has also worked as a technical business development director, where he integrated directly with HVAC customers, developers, consultants, contractors, regulatory bodies, and government. He is familiar with various international HVAC regulations and standards in Europe and the Middle East and African regions. Now I am inviting Mr. Nabil for his presentation. Over to you, sir.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Good afternoon to all the attendees. Good morning for the folks that are joining us from the US or Europe. Okay, can you see my presentation on the screen?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, let me enlarge. Okay, I'll just dive right into it. Actually, before I start, I just want to mention that as you all have seen from the title, our aim for today's event is to talk about raising the bar of energy efficiency, and one key item is trusting the specification of the equipment that we use, and how testing and verification and certification is important. Generally speaking, HVAC can cost up to 25% of new construction, between installation cost and equipment cost. So it's a very important element, and mechanical engineers and specifiers should pay special attention, not only to when they conduct load calculation for the building, but also when they specify or select and approve the equipment. There are many options and technologies to choose from these days, as well as multiple brands in the market. For example, if you are considering a VRF system, there are at least 20 brands that you can choose from. So in today's economy and tight project budget, as you all know, you are pressured to maintain cost below certain levels and reduce costs as much as possible. So contractors or suppliers, in some cases, oftentimes can offer value engineering options, different brands, models. Some consultants may specify a brand that they are familiar with or comfortable with. So whether they've used it or not in the past, the question today is, how would you be certain that the product that you are about to consider will deliver the specification that you require for your project, even if you have used the product in the past? Because products often change, and manufacturers are also under pressure to reduce costs. So it's important to make sure that the product has been, that the product that you're using are continuously checked and verified by a third party that's unbiased and is an expert on what they do in that field. Someone that can measure everyone with the same stick. So when you compare different players or participants, you are comparing apples to apples if you have certification. So this is, again, where certification becomes very important, and we should give you the peace of mind as you're trying to reduce the various risks and obstacles in your projects. So I'm going to talk about basically energy efficiency in general, which was covered by our earlier speakers, and also specifically talk about equipment specifications and certification. Energy efficiency and clean cooling can advance 3 international agreed upon goals simultaneously. The one you see on the screen, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, also the Paris Climate Agreement, and the Montreal Protocol's Kigali Amendment. In other words, it could address or directly or indirectly affect things like poverty, reduce food loss, improve health, manage our natural resources, support sustainable cities and communities, and combat climate change concurrently. So it's a good cause, improving energy efficiency and selecting highly efficient equipment. Dr. Samir talked about energy consumption and energy in general. In this slide, I will cover electricity consumptions in a typical high ambient country. As you can see on the left side, on average, 50% of the electricity usage is consumed by the residential sector in the GCC region, or in the hot regions. On the right-hand side, the AC system in a typical villa, for example, in GCC, will consume about 67% of the total power consumption. This number, of course, can be higher depending on the specific region or season. For example, in the summer, it can climb up all the way to 85% of the total utility bill. This is why it's crucial, again, for this region to pay utmost attention to the equipment's energy efficiency levels. We can also save energy, but of course, by paying attention to the building envelope design and prevent dissipation of energy by using good insulation and other guidelines as per ASHRAE 90.1s. So it's not just equipment, it's also building envelope, as you all know. in this slide, you can see from this is a slide from the International Energy Agency. Due to global warming, growth in population, and increase in the middle class in Asia and Africa, installed air conditions around the world will be on the rise in the next 3 decades. You can see here, for example, in the Middle East, there are currently an estimated 60 million units, air conditioning units installed. That number will grow to 210 million units by 2050, so about 3.5 times. Also, another slide from the same source. There are a lot of energy efficient technologies and equipment available in the market today. In this graph, you can see that this represents the energy efficiency products available in specific markets, which usually are established by the government. You can see, for example, the red dot is what the minimum energy efficiency requirement that's established by the government. The green is the highest, and then the black bar is the market average. So if we take Saudi Arabia, for example, you can see that the average consumed air conditioned in the market is very close to the minimum of the available technology in the market. So the onus is on everyone, including not only the government, but also the engineers and end users to raise the bar, as the case for example, Japan or the US here. Okay, I'll switch to equipment specification and certification. So to reduce, consumption, we need to have affordable and practical energy efficient technologies available by the manufacturers. And the authorities also have to put in place standards and regulations to enforce that. So minimum energy performance standards, or MEPS, and also we have to have surveillance and certification programs to ensure compliance and weed out bad quality or low efficiency products. So today, if you ask an average person, how much energy or money will you save if you choose this equipment, technology spec versus that one? Most likely, the answer will be, I have no clue. So awareness is very important. Not only consultants or air conditioning engineers should be educated, but we also must educate the masses on how to select energy efficient product and understand some basics about air conditioning, including basic terminologies, for example. Of course, AHRI works very closely with the regulatory bodies in the region on development of standards and establishing minimum energy efficiency requirements. Also today, with the HVAC technology advancing and with the introduction of multiple types of systems that include many features and employ electronics, controls, variable speed, new refrigerants, indoor air quality features, you need to be very careful about how to select your HVAC equipment. Oftentimes, some suppliers try to push their equipment, which may or may not suit your requirements. Hence, it's always better to talk to suppliers that have a total system solution approach, where they are not biased to one type of system or another. We often hear the debate of VRF versus chillers, which one is better? They're both good and they both have applications that are suited for, so it depends on what are you working on in terms of a project. So when selecting equipment, you usually look at multiple things, as you can see here on the screen. Look at first cost, total cost of ownership, suitability, installation and commissioning time, because you usually are under tight project timelines. Other things like noise criteria, and so on. So ultimately, you want to comply with the also the local codes and regulations, but also to be sure that you are getting the the right specification that you have in your for your project, you have to also look at certification. It's a key for equipment selection. With specification, as most of you know, some of the things that get certified when it comes to air conditioning equipment is, energy efficiency, power consumption, seasonal energy efficiency, sound ratings, fan speed. This is just some examples of what gets certified. For the AHRI standards in the GCC region, as I mentioned, is different than the rest of the world in that it has extreme temperature and humidity conditions, or what we call T3 temperature. I would say that, as I mentioned earlier, we're working with the regulatory body. Relatively speaking, the GCC region has recently started regulating, and also MENA region, the entire region actually, Asia, has relatively recently started regulating energy efficiency requirements on HVAC equipment. So new rating standards had to be developed to accommodate that, since most of the existing international standards were made for milder climates, like Europe and other countries. This is a list of AHRI standards that cover high ambient conditions. And a good example is AHRI 211, 241, which is based on 210, 240, which covers all residential units up to 65,000 BTU. Consultants actually should require their products to be certified against this AHRI standard, as I mentioned earlier, to guarantee that the specifications are met, and other standards based on different applications. Why AHRI certification in particular? AHRI, when it comes to high ambient regions, for example, when you're calculating seasonal energy efficiency, we look at a wider range in terms of temperature. So we cover 75% of the temperature range that we see in the region, typical high ambient area. Versus if you use, for example, or test per ISO, it only covers 30% as mandatory, which most people only do mandatory. Also, AHRI test labs that we use for certification, they not only have ISO 17025 requirements, which is fundamental, of course, for test lab, but we also have our own AHRI 140 requirements, which is specific for HVAC industry, and versus ISO, which is generic for labs, any kind of lab, including toys and automotive labs. AHRI ensures that basically the labs look at things like full system psychometric round robin testing, making sure that the lab is calibrated correctly. We look at airflow measurement apparatus. We basically look at things that are specific to HVAC testing to make sure that the results are as accurate as possible. Why do we also have tighter tolerances than other standards, typical international standards like ISO and EN standards. So, for example, if you look at temperature variation that we allow, it's it's a fraction or 0.3 versus 0.5 or 0.1. Why is this important? Because we have done a study to compare, tolerances when you test in a psychometric test room or a lab. The higher the variation is, the bigger chances that the result will vary also by wider ranges. So your total capacity can vary up to 8%. 8% if you allow 0.5 tolerance versus 5% or less if you use AHRI standards. So, and this is a big percentage and can sway your savings a lot. And finally, I want to talk about why certification is important. I'm sure that many of you have heard or used the term, product is rated per AHRI standard, for example, 340 or 550, 590, or product is tested by AHRI, so and so. This can be misleading. An unaware target audience may interpret the product to be equal to or equivalent to products that are AHRI certified. In this case, manufacturer may, when you say I'm tested per AHRI or rated per AHRI, it's basically a manufacturer or any party that is picking a sample and testing it in a non-AHRI approved lab. So the term again can be misleading. So it's usually the unit that is chosen is not can or may not be a manufactured unit. It could be, it's not a randomly chosen unit, as AHRI does when they certify, do annual testing for certification. So it may not represent, the products that are being manufactured today. So as you can see, rated per AHRI does not mean even tested per AHRI. It only means that this is what the manufacturer's own published data states to the performance to be at, for example, 35 degrees C. It's hard to know or compare how manufacturers reach this value. Thus, how to compare and how to the product is selected. As for tested per AHRI, it all depends on the lab where it also was tested again. So in these cases, it's not possible to fairly and accurately compare products being evaluated by the owner. And that's why it's critical that you, in your project, you always require that the product has to be HRI certified, which will give you a peace of mind. So in summary, if you have performance requirements and MEPS requirements, and you go through the certified equipment route, you're going to have trusted output. And if you go through the non-certified or accepting outside test reports, then the test results or the specifications can always be questionable. With that, this is the end of my discussion. I'll turn the camera and microphone back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Nabil. Now the session is open for the question and answer. I am also providing a feedback link in the chat box. Please provide your valuable feedback.
Shailendra, there is a question came in the chat box about the courses, whether of AHRI, whether they are only offered by the chapters, or
Yes.
there was a suggestion to have it coming from the training, coming by experts, whatever. Let me be clear here. The Global Training Center in Dubai of AHRI is responsible to deal with various chapters, and they are ready to organize with the chapters courses. They have a plenty number of chapters they can do, they can select. The point here is when the society through the GTC offer or quote a course, definitely it would be the minimum possible in order to promote the course content to chapter members. So this is one thing. Second, of course, that will not limit the possibility for any interested members or non-members to go into training by other experts who definitely are of caliber in offering the education. But the point here is you don't get the certification of attendance by AHRI itself. AHRI is responsible for offering you the certificate of attendance and offering you the number of credits that if any is interested to go into getting the benefit through the higher education, continuous education hours, if you are lead or USGBC, whatever, that you need a certain number of hours to confirm in a year time, then definitely AHRI would be a good situation. Please, if you have any concern about the prices, about the courses, contact GDC with Ms. Aya Saeed, who will be definitely interested in replying to you promptly.
Yeah, Dr. Sameer, there is another question regarding the 90.1 standard. Muhammad Al-Sheikh is asking about compliance path. compliance path in the 90.1 standard. What is the meaning there?
Compliance part. You see, when
Yes.
you follow the standards and your interest in following it to become in compliance with the chapter, with the standard, the point is you have to have an authority of jurisdiction who's going to take from you your confirmation that you went through all the requirement, mandatory, prescriptive, or you went into the Appendix G. The authority of jurisdiction in a certain state, in a certain location, will confirm and will offer you the compliance certification. In the absence of such entities called authority having jurisdiction, that would be a problem for the building in a certain territory. So you need to have authority of jurisdiction who is really familiarized with the content of the, and it's as amended. When it becomes a law, there is no question about it. Here you have to follow, the law is there. But if it's a standard and you want to be in compliance with it, there should be an authority who's going to come and offer you the confirmation that you are in compliance. People who don't have it, they went into a different path, going into 189, and they require authority of jurisdiction, or they go into another rating system in their territory, or in Europe, BREEAM, UK, or in the US, LEED, GLOBE, or whatever. So compliance should be confirmed by an entity that is authorized to do so, mainly authority having jurisdiction first. If not, you go into a council, you go into a rating system, and you will be proud of saying that I am fulfilling the scoring points for such particular label.
Yes, we have another question from the same participant. What the AHRI alternative for Eurovent Energy Efficiency Certification Program for AHU?
I can take that. I think I've typed an answer in the chat box. You can use the HRI 410, 430, and 1350 programs.
Okay, thank you. Now we have the last question. To what extent is the certification work conducted in a laboratory setting as contrasted to under field conditions?
Excellent question. In the lab setting, of course, you have to have a controlled environment, so you can basically determine the capacity of an air conditioning unit or the tonnage under set conditions or temperatures, humidity, static pressure, airflow. So you can compare everybody with the same stick. Versus, in field conditions, this is not always constant or the same. The one thing that we do measure that will give you a good idea for, when you compare it to the field condition is, when we measure seasonal energy efficiency ratio. This test and calculation basically gives you an idea of how much this unit will, how much electricity or energy this unit will consume throughout the year at all the different levels of or different temperatures, not only, for example, a fixed temperature 46 degrees or 35 degrees. I hope that answers the questions.
I will just add, Nabil, that you have also the ability to extract from the directory and from the system various different conditions, through an operating range. For example, like on the chillers, you have a complete, bigger map that would give you the idea, the concept, not only design conditions, but any particular condition.
Yeah, excellent point. Yeah, if you're interested in a specific temperature, you can always go to, if the product is certified, go to the directory if it's a chiller and find out, the performance of that unit at that specific temperature.
There is no more question. So it was really a nice program. this energy efficiency. So I have seen more than 100 participants since a long time. I would like to propose a vote of thanks to all the speakers. Mr. Richie Mittal, DRC, ASHRAE RAL. Thank you, sir, for motivating us. I would also like to thank to Mr. Samir Tribolosi, ASHRAE Distinguished Lecturer, for the presentation on the topic ASHRAE 90.1 and the ASHRAE 189. Thank you, sir. You have well explained these standards. I would also like to thank to the AHRI team, Mr. Khalil Isa and Mr. Nahil Shamim for the presentation on convergence of ASHRAE 90.1 regional green building codes, AHRI standards, certification programs, and importance and relevance of monitoring, verification, and market surveillance through certification. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Richie Mittal, Dr. Samir, Khalil, and Nahid.
Thank you, Shailendra. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Shailendra.
Mittal, and everybody
you.
else who got involved in this. You know, the route is a long route, and hopefully our path will cross many times in the future as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now I'm closing this meeting.